So, one of the strange things we've had to go through this year was everybody on this call, as you said, we're doing this virtually because we can't get to a conference, which would normally be in Bangkok where I live, and I'd be on the stage and you'd be on the stage and the rest of it. We've all had to deal with working from home and remote working and all those sorts of things. And while that's been a pain in a lot of ways, and also it's led to a lot of interesting, things that people have enjoyed, it's also created things that we didn't think we'd missed that we have missed. So I'm going to run a little quiz by you. If you go to the next chart, please. I want you to all think about this. What did you miss most of these three things? The daily commute time, the coffee or smoking breaks that you would have with colleagues or people maybe in the building that aren't in the same company as you, the structured work days and hours that you don't really have anymore. Now, I'll guarantee you, most people would go, oh, I miss the structured work days and hours because we all seem to be working longer than we thought we would be working.
The blurred lines, the on and off is no, like, when is,
right. When you start work, when you finish work, who knows?
Yeah, it's no longer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's this day, that day, other day, next day.
Well, literally this year, how many times have you sat on Zoom calls like this and you've said, what day is it? Because it's, who knows, right? But the other two things, interesting, in some work I've been doing over the last month or two, I'm finding more and more people are talking about missing the other two things as well. So if we go to the next chart, let me start talking about some of those things and what we can do about it.
Yeah,
Vanessa,
so
you want to make a point about this, right?
Yeah, so as Dave starts to talk about like what we're missing, I think that in the research industry, we have like these three phases, which is the discovery phase, the ideation phase, and the go-to-market phase, the concept testing and the copy testing and stuff like that. And the deprivations are actually impacting all three stages. And so I think that's something for us to think about, is how do we actually keep the research process going through deprivation? So here we go, Dave's going to take us through and sort of look at how the discovery and ideation phase of is actually really being impacted by these changes that we're seeing. Yeah. So Dave.
These very obvious changes in life. I mean, first of all, there's a term that I come across quite recently. It's becoming a real talking point. It's called casual ideation deprivation. What the heck does that mean? Well, the real thing that brings it to life is the coffee break, the casual coffee break, or the casual smoking break, for those of you that still smoke. Those times when we would gather around the coffee machine, or we go down to the street side to have a cigarette, and we talk to people that maybe we talk on the desk next to us, or maybe they're people that were from a different department, or sometimes they're from people that are in a different company but happen to be in the same building, right?
Networking at conferences.
Or networking at conferences, right? But the point is that those times, those 5-10 minute little chats are quite often times when you find out things and you get a little bit of inspiration. Somebody says, what are you working on today? Well, I'm working on X. Oh yeah, that reminds me of something I worked on. And then you have a conversation, you go back to your desk and you get a new idea, right? So what's really happening is simple cross-pollination is getting missed out because we are regimenting ourselves on a lot of Zoom and etc. calls. Every call is about a given thing. We don't spend a bit more casual time. And so that accidental discovery of insights and opportunities is sort of being missed out on. So what do you have to do about it? Well, one of the things is maybe scheduling more just chat time, just casualness, no agendas, just, hey, what are you doing? What's happening? And let the conversation flow. Much as we would encourage in real terms in, say, a really good in-depth interview or a focus group where we would try to encourage people to just let it out there, well, maybe we ought to be actually scheduling that and thinking about how we do that a bit more. So encouraging casual discussion instead of just set meetings. Let's go to the next idea, because if SIP was important, the other big thing that really surprised me is the number of people that tell me they're missing the daily commute. Now, because most of us that are listening to this live in Asia, the daily commute can sometimes be 2, 3 hours, 4 hours a day, right? And of course, if you'd asked us last year, nobody said, I really enjoy that 4 hours I spend on the train every day. Nobody said, I really like sitting in traffic for 3 hours every day. Nobody did. But because you're not doing it, two things have happened. One is people assumed, oh, I've got to work from home, so that's great. I'll have that 2 or 3 hours to myself. No, actually what they're finding out is the work day is expanding into all those hours. And so instead of having 2 or 3 hours of just sitting on a train reading my favorite stuff on my phone, or just daydreaming, or sitting in my car listening to my favorite music, or maybe an audio book or something, or just talking to the person next to me, I'm missing all that. And that classic third place activity has disappeared. Now, what's important for us as insights professionals is that was a time when ideas stewed in your brain, where something might trigger things, but otherwise you just stewed on things, you mused, you thought, a bit of daydreaming, and that becomes a problem. So again, maybe what we need is just more to set aside, and maybe as both researchers and as clients, as employers, as employees, we need to set aside separation times where it's just about don't force the issue, just let it flow a bit more. Encourage people and panels to do nothing. I mean, here's an experiment. Next time you're doing a panel session, or you do even in a focus group, just say, okay, now for the first 10, 20 minutes, I don't want you to do anything. I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to just sit there and have a think about stuff, right? And after the 10 minutes, what came up? Where did you get to? Because those are sort of things we're missing. That daily, the distraction of doing nothing, the distraction of being bored is sometimes something that we can take value from.
Yeah, Dave, and I think one of the things that I like what you put there, like give teams separation time or do nothing time. Something that we're doing is basically calling it switch off. So switch off time, and, basically saying schedule and switch off time. Which is, because often even too, it was like actually walking out of the office and going for lunch out of the office was switch off time. Like you could just leave it, and you might meet up with somebody and have lunch, and you could just, as you said, stew, think, connect. But right now it's full on. But actually giving it a name, and actually maybe even scheduling it, switch off time, like you would
switch
have.
off time. Good idea. Yeah.
To be able to do that. So really cool. But who would have guessed daily commute being something you miss? Yeah.
It's hard to believe, right? But people do. But people are. And I'll give you a simple example. A guy I was talking to about this was saying that he got into the habit last year of listening to audiobooks while he sat in the car.
Yep.
Right. Now, what he's actually told me is that last year he was going through an audiobook a week, sitting in the car.
Yeah.
So he said, I listened to 50 books last year. This year I've listened to 3.
Yeah.
And it's just, he said, and mostly they were non-fiction. They were sort of vaguely work-related, not heavy textbooks, but vaguely work-related. And he's just got, I'm missing really that. I'm missing that inspiration. So here's another thing that people are talking about. Cross-pollination really needs some sort of encouragement. The problem is that when you're working from home, you really are cut off from casual, accidental discussions, from moments of everyday inspiration. Instagram, TikTok, Line, Facebook, all these things are great. We're using them a lot, but they are also parts of the communities that we are normally part of, but we're not using those enough in replacing the things we've been doing at work. So, for example, I'm sure we're all spending as much or more time on Facebook, but are we using that platform to replace some of the casual, informal things we used to do in the workday, for example? Do you have a hangout on TikTok or Facebook where, the people you would go smoking with, you could all gather and have a smoking session on that, or a coffee session up there? So planned Zoom is okay, and it's made it possible for us to connect and be efficient, but it doesn't really help gossip. It doesn't help the informal. And gossiping and the informal are the things where ideas really come from. Hey, shooting the breeze, as we used to say. Maybe that's an old-fashioned saying, right? So creating more monitored downtime, as you said, scheduling it. If you're an employer, if you're a marketer, if you're managing a research company, schedule downtime for people and just encourage them to no objective sharing, just what's going on, right? And no offense, Vanessa, but given that the company that pays your salary would be the perfect people to get that started, right? Because of what they sell, right? But these are sorts of ideas that are dwelling up and coming to the surface now as we discover and explore more about the real things that have changed about life on a day-to-day basis, and how we work and how we find insights.
Bibliosexual.